Hello everybody, this is Desmond Yu-Gi-Oh! So, first of all, before I go into the actual bit of the video, I did get quite a few extra views that I normally don't get on my archetype speculation last night. Um, so I guess as of right now, I'll talk about what archetype speculation is and explain sort of what this series is meant to be. So unlike deck profiles, where I basically just read whatever cards are in the deck and so on and so forth, explaining how the deck works, this aims to read every card within the archetype, or explain what they do within the archetype, and how the archetype functions, what are its core strengths and weaknesses, so on and so forth. Um, Also, in referendum to my video on X-Sabers, I did make a mistake. They have a level 1 that I did not know about, that actually does a hell of a lot for the deck, along with a few misconceptions, including me reading card effects wrong and stuff like that. Um, not like insanely many, mostly just, me thinking of combos with the way I remember the cards over the way that they're actually read, so, mind you. With that being said, though, let's get into our second archetype speculation of all time, and this is Rockets. Now, Rockets are a really weird archetype, because not only do they have your core cards, but they also involve another archetype known as Boral, but they also have association with the archetype known as Topologic. So, firstly, I will explain that there are a bunch of cards outside of this archetype as well that support it, such as I believe it's Gate Dragon, mind you. I don't remember exactly what the card's name is, but it can summon itself while you control a link, while your opponent controls a link monster, and then it can special a level 4 or lower from your hand, level 4 or lower Dark Dragon from your hand. But either way, so let's talk about the archetype as a whole, what it does good at, what it's bad at, and let's talk about how this deck really should play. So, Rockets all have two effects that they all share. All the base Rockets, mind you. So when Link Monster's effect activates the target's face-up card, you can quick effect destroy this card, and then they have an effect. That is the big thing. That is what they're meant to be, because they're all meant to be like ammo for the Rocket cards, as explained in the anime. So basically, this entire deck functions around having your Rocket monsters destroy themselves when they're targeted by Link monsters, and then they all gain extra effects that Revolver on stunning or removing cards on the field. You get that pun? Because Revolver? Yeah, I know. I'm 10 out of 10. Their other main effect is that during the end phase, if they were in the graveyard and were destroyed this turn, you can special one Rocket, except another copy of itself from your deck. So this deck basically keeps, it recurs resources over time. Now, the biggest issue with Rockets, in my opinion overall, before we go into the Link monsters and Spell and Trap support, is that their base monster lineup is very, very slow built, and it's not very strong as they're not as competent as I'm trying to think of how to say this. They're not very competent as their own archetype without their Spell and Trap support whatsoever. And the thing is that they do not function very well as a stall deck because of the fact that you can just keep running over their monsters, and your opponent can simply play around these cards by returning them to the hand, banishing them, shuffling them back into the deck, or shuffling them from the graveyard into the deck, so on and so forth. So there's a lot of ways to play around these cards because their effects are so specific. Now there are a few specific Rockets, or cards that involve Rockets. You have cards like Speed Burst Dragon, which are not a part of the archetype, but are direct support for the archetype. And that is that these Speed Burst can special when you take effect damage, then Then you inflict damage to your opponent equal to the damage you took, and then gain LP equal to half the damage you inflicted. So basically, you negate half the effect damage and deal the effect damage you would have taken to your opponent, effectively. The big one, though, is that when it's tribute summon, you can add 2 rockets with different names to your deck to your hand, which can actually be pretty good, but we don't. You're normally never going to get that effect off. You also have another special rocket card. This is Rocket Recharger. So basically, this card, when a dark monster that was spelled from the extra sent to the graveyard, you can send this from your hand to choose to target one of those dark monsters, special one dark monster from your grave with a different original name from the target monster. So basically, if a Boral gets destroyed, then you send this to the graveyard, target a different Boral monster in your graveyard, summon it. That's the main way it goes. And then while you control a dark monster, special from the extra deck, your opponent cannot target this card for attacks, which is not very good. You have Exploder Rocket, which does the same thing as all the other rockets, but it's newer, and then Absorouter, which is a card that special summons itself while you control a rocket, and then when it's sent to the graveyard, you can add 1 rocket from your deck to your hand. And then finally we have Rocket Synchron, which literally just normal summons. When normal summons, it just Monster Reborn's a level 5 or higher Dark Dragon in your grave, but negates effects and destroy it during the end phase. And then you can't summon except for dark monsters for the rest of the turn, which doesn't matter because the entire archetype and any way you'd play this deck would revolve around you having darks. So I guess we'll go into the spell and trap support now that we know what this deck is supposed to actually do, and then we'll head on to the linked monsters, including Borals and Topologics. Okay. So we have Boot Sector Launch. This is their field spell. All rockets on the field gain turn to attack and defense. And then you can activate one of these effects per turn. Mind you, they are both, or at least you can only use, either of these effects. Or, no, you can only use one of each of these. No, not one of each. You can only use one of the following effects once per turn. Hard once per turn. So you can either special up to 2 rockets with different names from your hand in defense position, or you can, if your opponent controls more monsters, you can special rockets from your grave with different names in defense position up to the difference. So basically, if you control no monsters and they control 4, you can special up to 4 rockets from your grave with different names in defense position. So it's pretty good. It's mostly there though for the hand effect, so you can special the 2 guys from hand, and then link with them. Next up we have Boral Cooling, tribute 1 rocket, then target 1 Boral link monster you control, equip it with this card while this card is equipped. The equipped monster gains this effect once per turn quick effect. You can target 1 monster you control, it cannot be destroyed by battle card effects this turn. Basically this just gives them, because it says that the equipped monster gains this effect, meaning that it basically just gives them a second way to trigger the Rockets monster's effects. Next up is Boral Generator. This is a monster. This is a what would the card be? Oh my lord. It's pretty much a premature burial for the archetype that doesn't require you paying life points. The only difference is that it banishes the monster when the equipped spell leaves the field. But if and also if the equipped monster is sent to the graveyard. Or if this card is sent to the graveyard because the equipped monster was destroyed, you can draw 1. So basically, if you use this effect, if you special summon 1, then destroy it with a card effect, destroy the monster with a card effect, you get to draw 1, and you get the flowing effect at the end of turn. So pretty decent. You can only use it's a hard once per turn. This whole card, so it's more just okay than anything. It's mostly just an extender. Boral Supplier. Basically, during each standby phase, if you control a Boral link, you can target 1 rocket in your grave, special it, but destroy it during the end phase. Basically, this just is it just keeps giving you back your card, your rockets, so you can use their effects. It's okay, but it's too slow to run in the way that the game plays now. Next up, we have Link Turret. When this card is activated, place 4 counters on this. Each time you take damage, place 1 counter on this. And then during your main phase 2, you can remove a counter from this, target a rocket in your graveyard, special it, but its effects are negated, also banish it when it leaves the field. You cannot special summon monsters from your extra deck except Dark Link monsters the turn you activate this effect. This card would be insane if it was a continuous spell. If it was a because it's a continuous trap, and the fact that it banishes and you have no way to recover banished in Rockets, this card is kind of useless. But it can, if you manage to pull it off, this can give you some really big extra links that include a bunch of Topologics and a bunch of other monsters. Next up is probably their best spell in the entire archetype. This is Quick Launch. So this card says you can special one rocket from your deck, but cannot attack, also destroy it during the end phase. Oh boy. So, archetypal, what is it, Psychic Emergency or whatever it's called. It's the one that specials a level 3 or lower, Psychic from your deck. But basically it's that. So it just specials a rocket from your deck, and it cannot attack, but it can be destroyed. Squib draw, target rocket you control, destroy it, and if you do, draw 2 cards. These are both non-once per turns, by the way, and they're quick plays, which is actually really funny. Tactical exchanger, target face-up monster you control, destroy it. If you do special one rocket with a different original name from your deck or graveyard, you can only activate 1 per turn. And that's pretty much it for most of the standard rocket cards. These are all the cards that involve rockets. There's a bunch of others involving Borals, but... And I guess for one last tip, I'll talk about Rocket Tracer. So Rocket Tracer has a quick effect. You can target one face-up card you control, destroy it. If you do, special rocket from your deck, except a copy of itself, and then you cannot special summon from the extra deck, except dark monsters for the rest of the turn. One of the coolest things is that with the addition of Rocket Tracer and Apsarouter Dragon, a lot of the other cards in the archetype become a lot better. Simply put, cards like Quick Launch become even better now, because what you can do is you can normal summon Rocket Tracer, then you can use the effect of, you can activate Quick Launch, then use Rocket Tracer targeting your Quick Launch, and then you get to special summon 2 rockets from the deck instead, which is insane. Other combos are to use Dragon Shrine to send Apsarouter Dragon, so you get to add, you can add, Rocket Synchron to your hand, special, normal summon Rocket Synchron along with your other plays somewhere along the line, and then you special summon back your Apsarouter Dragon, and then you go into Borreload Savage Dragon, which I'll talk about later. So now I'll go into the low tier link monsters, I like to call them, that are in the archetype. There's only a few, and then we'll get onto the Borals and Topologics and all that. So Booster Dragon requires 2 rockets. Once per turn you can target one face-up monster on the field, gains 500 attack and defense. Your opponent cannot activate cards or effects in response to this card's activation. By the way, that effect is present on most of the links that have an effect that revolves around targeting, because that is how they are supposed to work. It basically makes it to where instead of your dudes just being negated super easily, it now makes it to where you effectively make all your dudes spell speed 4 on a bunch of these cards. So if this link comes in the summon card is destroyed by battle card effect and sent to the graveyard, you can target one of the dragon in your grave, special it. It's pretty good. I run one of it. Or no, I run 2 of it in this deck, but you should, if you're going to run it, run 1 at most. It's okay, but it's better as it's better later on, and obviously I'm not going to talk about the Dragon Link version. There's a difference with that versus this deck. Delindrous Dragon, this is pretty much the best Link 2, aside from what I believe is, besides Quad Boral Dragon in the entire archetype. So, what Delindrous Dragon says is once per turn during your opponent's end phase, you can target one attack position monster that did not your opponent controls that did not declare an attack. If you do, destroy it, and then if you do, inflict damage to your opponent equal to that monster's original attack. That's not the reason why you run it. You run it because A, it only requires 2 dark dragon monsters, but B, because So, where is it? Um, if a rocket monster is a special summon to your field while this card is in your graveyard, except during the damage step, you can special summon this card but banish it when it leaves the field. You can only use each effect of it once per turn. Simply put, you link it to this, then you start linking into your others, then at some point you special a rocket from some effect. Then you get to bring this dude back, and you have free link material. So, I run one of them. Some people opt to not run them at all, because there are other cards in Rockets that can do slightly better. But I like to run one just because he could give me a bit of extension that I could actually really need. Mini Boral Dragon. So this card just requires 2 rockets. If you control Boral Link monster and this card is in your graveyard, you can contribute 1 link through a lower monster. Special this card, but it cannot be used as link material of a monster with the same link rating as the attributed monster. You can only use each effective mini Boral once per turn. Basically, this is just a bunch of link extensions. This card doesn't really help in the rocket deck too much by itself. It's more just there for to continue your plays after you've gotten into your Borals. Which he's actually pretty cool because with their newest card, Striker Dragon, which I don't even know if I have. I'll show that one in a minute because that one directly impacts this deck. You can summon, you can have, if you have Striker Dragon still on the field and then you have a Boral, you can tribute, the Striker Dragon special this, and then if you extend any more, you can get either a second Boral, a Topologic, or like one of the Link 3s that Revolver played that are okay. Overburst Dragon. So this requires 2 rockets, like most of the other Link 2s. You can target 1 Link monster you control, special summon 1 rocket from your hand to a zone that target points to, but the monster summoned cannot be used as Link material, also destroy it during the end phase. You can only use this effect once per turn. When this card is destroyed but balanced into the graveyard, you can add 1 rocket monster from your grave to your hand. And this card is kind of okay. I would play one of them occasionally. Simply put, this one actually has a really funny combo where you can if you haven't used Rocket Tracer's effect yet, you can use this guy to special summon to another Link zone. It points to another Link monster's Link zone it points to. Then you can use its effect to like destroy a card you control and stuff like that. So basically, it just gives you free extensions. And because Rocket Tracer is a tuner, you just get out any level 4 and you get Boral and Savage, negating the fact that it can't Link summon with that card. Next up, and what I believe to be the best of all the new Links, or of the Links, we have Quad Boral Dragon. So this card requires 2 dragons, including 1 rocket. You can discard 1 card, target 1 face-up card on the field. You cannot special summon Link 2 or lower monsters from the extra rest of the turn. Also, destroy the targeted monster. Mind you, it has to be a monster, which kind of has some issues, but if it was a Link monster, you can special summon any number of rocket monsters with different names from your hand or graveyard up to its Link rating. Namely, this is like an ending card, sort of, because you get a lot of cards in your hand that you don't use. So you would use it with after you've done like all your LP combos and stuff like that, if you're playing the Guard Dragon variant. And then you would use this using LP and if you use LP in any rocket, then you have you already do your Pisty combos and all that, and then you summon this dude. You discard 1, target it, blow itself up, then you special summon Tracer plus an A level 4, and then you get Boral and Savage. So that's about it for the archetype as a whole. As for the rocket monsters effects when they're destroyed, I guess I'll go over them really quickly because they're really fast. Anesthesia Rocket makes it so a face-up monster can't attack and its effects negated. Auto Rocket sends a spell or trap to the grave. Exploder Rocket deals 2,000 to each player. Magna Rocket sends 1 monster on the field to the grave. Metal Rocket destroys all cards in the same column this card was in when it was destroyed. Um, Silver Rocket allows you to banish one card from your opponent's extra deck. And Shell Rocket allows you to destroy one monster in the column this card was, and then destroy monsters in adjacent columns to that monster. So they're all pretty decent, but let's get into the, I don't even know if I have Striker on this one. I don't think I do, actually, on this account. Nope. Okay. Well, we don't have Striker Dragon, sadly, to show you guys, but I do know what it does, so don't worry. So Striker Dragon, what it says is when this is, it's a Link 1 that requires one level 4 lower dragon monster, I believe. When it's Link Summon, you can add one, Boot Sector launch from your deck to your hand. And then I think it's like once per turn you can target one monster you control, destroy it, and then if you do Special Rocket from your grave, something like that, like, you basically just use it because it searches Boot Sector. Regardless, now let's go on to the Boral cards. So we've already went over some of these, Boral cooling, all that. So let's get on to the first one. We have Boral Guard Dragon. Cannot be destroyed by card effects. Once per turn, you can send one card from your spell and trap cards onto the graveyard. Special one monster in either graveyard, from either graveyard to your field. Special one monster from either graveyard to your field that was destroyed and sent there this turn, but negate its effects. And then its quick effect, which all of the Borals have. All of the Boral Link monsters have, or at least the Link 4 Boral Link monsters have the quick effect where they can target one monster in the field and then do something to it. So, and they cannot be responded by your opponent's card effects. So this one targets a monster and sends it to face-up defense position, which is very important, because this card is used in flip shenanigans, aka empty jar. So next up we have Boral Dragon. This card cannot be targeted with monster effects. Once per turn you can target one face-up monster your opponent control, or one face-up monster on the field that loses 500 attack and defense. And then obviously it's spell speed 4. At the start of the damage step of this attacks an opponent's monster, you can place that monster in a zone this card points to and take control of it, but send it to the graveyard during the end phase of the next turn. So basically this card, during battle, allows you to steal a monster instead of killing it, which is really good because you can steal your opponent's Link monsters and then use them until the next turn, or link them off if you want to. Next up we have Boral Sword Dragon. This card cannot be destroyed by battle. Quick effect, you can make one attack position monster and change it to defense position. Obviously you can't respond to it. And then once per turn when this card declares an attack, you can target one face-up monster, or you can declare an attack on face-up monster, you can activate this effect. Until the end of this turn, this card gains attack equal to half that monster's attack. Half that monster's attack. If it does, that monster's attack is halved. So basically this card halves and then takes half, so you're always doing 3,000 at the very least with this. So like if you're going up against a 3,000 monster, this card gains 1,500, and then that monster loses 1,500, then it blows over them. Cool fact about Boral Sword, if you use the effect to change it to defense position, it also allows you to attack a second time per turn, which is kind of funny, but the attack gaining effect can only happen once per turn. So what most Boral Sword Dragon people do, they attack the biggest monster on the field, use its effect to gain half, then they attack with the attack a lower monster with it so they deal even more damage. Okay, so let's go on to the other extra deck monsters. Only one of them is really used, the other two don't get used very much. So Boral Savage Dragon, this is the most used of all of them. So when this is synchro summoned, you can target one Link monster in your graveyard. If you equip it to this card, if you do, place Borals on this equal to the Link rating of that monster. So basically how many arrows it has, that's how many counters this card gets. This card gains attack equal to half the attack of the monster equipped to it by this effect. And then when your opponent activates a card or effect, quick effect, you can remove one Boral from this card and negate the activation if you do destroy it. And then that's a hard once per turn. So it's literally just free negates and a massive beat stick at the same time. The biggest I've ever seen this card get, was with, what was it, Link God Dragon, I believe it is. I want to see if I can show it to you guys. I don't know if they have it in this version yet. Nope. But Link God Dragon is a Link 5, and it's a 5,000 attack monster. So this card would become 5,500, and it would have 5 counters, so it could do it up to 5 times before it can no longer use the effect. Like I said, really good card. You can play it in pretty much any deck now. It's just free negation. Borreload Furious Dragon. So this card requires 2 Dark Dragon monsters. And its effects are actually pretty cool. So it has quick effect. You can target one monster you control, one card your opponent controls, destroy them. Generally, you're going to target this card. You can banish this card from your graveyard, then target one Dark Link monster in your graveyard. Special it, but cannot activate its effects this turn. So this card's really good because you can use it to pop itself, destroy a card, then during your next turn you can special back one of your Dark Links and then either link off with it or just use it as a beat stick. Finally, we have Borreload X Charge. This is probably the worst of all of them. So this card requires 2 level 4 Dark Dragons. He has 3,000 attack, which is really good for a rank 4, but that's his best thing, basically. So, neither player can target this Xyz summon card with card effects except its own. Okay, that's not a big deal. It's okay protection, but once Pertaining can attach one material from this card, target one monster, one face-up monster on the field, it loses 600 attack and defense. And then then you can special one Boral Dragon, one Boral monster from your graveyard, but banish it during the end phase. Also, you cannot special summon other monsters or attack directly for the rest of the turn. Basically, this card is just an OTK. Your best bet with this card would be to use this, summon out Boral Sword, and then go for an OTK. I only run it for flavor points, but this card is really, really bad, and it has like no uses. And we'll finish this off with Topologics. So there are 4 Topologics, one of them being banned for a good reason. I actually have in the extra deck because this was an early deck I created when I was using banned cards because I had them, but regardless. So, Topologics all have effects based on whether a monster is special summoned to a zone they point to a link zone they point to, mind you. And mind you, it's a link monster points to, so it doesn't have to be yours, it can be your opponent's as well. And then they all have varying effects based on it. So, Topologic Bomber says that if another monster is special summoned, like I said, the effect that they all have. Destroy all monsters in your opponent in the main monster zones. Also, your opponent cannot attack for the rest of this turn. During damage calculation, if this card attacked an opponent's monster, inflict damage to your opponent equal to the original, equal to the original attack of that monster. So this card can actually be really cool, especially if you have a card like Quick Launch Set, because you can special summon this. Then during your opponent's turn, when they start doing their combos, you can special you can quick launch special summon any rocket to the zone this guy points to, wipe their main monster zones, and then during the end phase you can do it again to wipe their board again. And the only big issue with this card is that your opponent, you cannot attack the rest of this turn when you activate the effect, but you want to use this as like a reactive effect anyway, so it doesn't matter too much. Next up we have the banned one, and for good reason. This is Topologic Gumblar. So if another monster is special summoned, we obviously know this. While this card is on the field, discard 1 or 2 random cards, then your opponent discards the same number, so basically you can discard 2, they discard 2 at random. Which is insane. During your main phase, if this card is extra linked and your opponent has at least one card in their hand, you can make your opponent discard one or two cards, whichever is higher. Then if they have no more cards in their hand, inflict 3,000 damage to them. You can only use one effect per turn and only once that turn. So most people use it for the discard 2 effect. The original discard 2 effect when it's special summoned, but if you can extra link it, which extra linking means you've done the U shape, it's called the U link board. This card can just, without using its first effect, it can literally just rip 2 cards out of your opponent's hands for free without you discarding. Then if your opponent lost their entire hand through this effect, they take 3,000 damage, which is kind of insane. This card was banned basically because there was a bunch of loops with this, and there was a loop with, or there was a deck with this, and it would Cyframe Omega and a few other cards that basically left your opponent having like 1 or 2 cards in hand at most. Sometimes even 0. And then draw 1 per turn and that was it. So, yeah, this card deserved to get banned. Next up is Top Logic Trispania. This is the only Link 3 monster in the entire deck. Or in the entire archetype, which is kind of cool. So, if I face a monster special summon, or if a monster special summon, banish as many, banish those monsters instead of destroying them, like, Gumblar, and then banish as many spell and trap cards on the field as possible. If you do inflict your 500 damage for each card banished to your opponent. So this card's actually really cool against card decks like Altergeist, which is actually where this card was first shown, was actually against Altergeist in the anime. Basically, this card just banishes your opponent's entire back row for free. This card does have a really good synergy with the card known as or a really good synergy against decks such as Eldritch, because this banishes all their cards instead of sending them to the grave. And because they're spell and trap cards, when this card activates, I believe it banishes them even if they're summoned, which is kind of cool. Don't quote me on that one though, I'm thinking with the rulings how that works. Last and certainly not least, this is basically the BFD of the archetype. So, you cannot summon slash set to any monster to any extra monster zone this card points to. So, basically, and there's a reason for that in a little bit. But that's not the reason why this card is broken. This card gains 200 attack for each banished card. So basically, just either player's banished cards, this card gains 200 for each. But that is not why this card is good. So, if another monster is special, which obviously it will, banish all cards on the field. Wipe the field of all cards and they're banished. The biggest thing though is once per turn during your standby phase of the turn after this card was banished by its own effect, special summon this banished card. So basically you summon this, you special summon, yeah, you special summon a card or you just summon any card to a card this points to, banish the entire field, then during the next standby phase, so basically during your opponent's standby phase, this special summons itself, and you special summon it to the middle zone. What that does is that it puts the cards pointing to both of the extra monster zones, so then if your opponent were to special summon to the extra monster zone at all, their entire field would get banished again. And then this card comes back in an even bigger beater. This card is insane, but sadly we can't really use it too well because of the way that the deck works. Weirdly enough too, and I feel kind of bad because I want this deck to come into the game, Topologic is actually part of another archetype as well, that is anime only, and that archetype is called Topologina, which focuses around, it's basically a link spam archetype based around destroying and banishing their own cards, and then gaining extra effects based on it. So like some cards get bonus effects if they're destroyed from Bomber Dragon, others have special effects where like if they get banished, or they can banish themselves and then gain extra effects when they're banished. Like, it's just a really cool archetype, and it's sad because it's only used in like 2 duels I think in the entire game, or in the entire show, but I really wish those cards would come to real life, because it actually seems like a really fun Cybers deck. But regardless, that's how topologics are. So, before I finish this, so I'm not going to do a duel with this archetype because I don't have all the cards I need to make this deck, like, competitive. But overall, this archetype is really, really strong if you, with a bunch of outside dragon support. This deck basically, does not function very well purely, but it can function, and it's better off being used as an engine in a guard dragon deck. But overall, the archetype is actually quite fun to play. Like I said, it's very slow as pure, so it's not really that good, but even as an engine, it still has some really fun synergies, and the fact is that this deck can put out quite a bit of beating and put out quite a good few early turn plays, and it can grind really well because of the fact that they float. So aside from that, that's all I have to say about Rockets. One of my favorite archetypes, like I said, or like I say now, I wish like I said, my biggest thing is that I wish they would bring Topologina to the game, because then Topologic would be a lot more playable. At least those that aren't, overpowered and got banned. That being said, though, hopefully you guys enjoyed. Like I said, I won't be doing a duel with this one because it makes the frickin' video way too long, and I don't want to make a duel with a deck that's not complete. So that's about it for now, guys. Hopefully you guys enjoyed, and yeah, I'll be seeing you guys all later.